Welcome, everybody on the other side of the screen. I'm sure you have been very busy sitting in on sessions. We appreciate everybody joining for Connect 2025. So for the next 25 to 30 minutes here, we are going to be talking all things project management, best practices, and why it makes a difference. So I appreciate you taking time out of your day. I know how busy everybody is, and I just am very appreciative of you taking time to sit in on the session and listen to what I have to say. All right, who am I? My name is Becca Sauerer. I am a senior project manager here at Stoneridge Software. I have 11 years of experience as a PMP certified project manager implementing a wide range of ERP solutions. I have a passion for connecting business goals with technology solutions. It really is what I eat, sleep, and breathe. Just to see the success and the impact that a good implementation can have on a client and an organization is so rewarding. So I really do everything that I can in my power to, do a project justice and see that project be successful. So I'm looking forward to sharing this information with you today. All right. So as we start off here, I found this little clip here and thought I'd share it just to get us off on the right page for the session. Reading what it says there. Please tell us about your experience with project management, and then the response being, so project management, like I manage projects. You maybe have heard that in a capacity that you've been a part of a project or been a part of an implementation. And sometimes, it's in the context of, well, we just get it done as a project manager. And maybe you are a project manager and you're hearing that and going, yep, you just get the work done. But what I wanted to go through here today is really some of the strategic best practices that we have used and that I have seen successful in my implementations across the board in my years of experience. And then we want to go through too about why it makes a difference. So to start us off here, I come from a sports background. I was an athlete in high school and college and still am today. And then I also was a coach. And then my kiddos are also in sports now too. And so this topic really resonates with me. And so when I was thinking about how I would present on this topic today, I thought what better way to draw a parallel between a good coach, and a good project manager, and what those similarities are. And taking it one step further into, how sporting events can be very similar to project implementations or ERP implementations. And so let's start off here. What I did a search. What does having a good project manager, why does having a good coach matter? Whew. And some of the things that came up were what you would expect as far as a good coach. And those are somebody who can provide guidance to players, somebody who can motivate players and keep them accountable for what they need to do in the sporting contest. They also identify strengths and weaknesses of individual players and also help them overcome challenges. And so, many of these things you are probably aware of today as far as what a coach does and brings and why that matters. And so the other side of it, I thought I would be to do that same search and ask, why does having a good project manager matter? And those elements that came out here are those ones that are bolded, which are a central point of coordination. It ensures that the project stays on track and they can effectively manage timelines, resources, make sure that they are providing good communication, minimizing risk, maximizing team productivity, providing that leadership and identifying any issues, and make informed decisions about how to navigate the challenges. Going one step farther as we continue this theme about a coach versus a project manager, I wanted to just kind of take a look at the similarities there between a coach and a project manager, and why having a good person in those roles really matters. And so you can see some of the similarities there: providing expert guidance, being motivated, and keeping folks accountable. So you look on the other side as far as project manager, effectively managing resources and communication, minimizing risk, and staying within a timeline. So thinking about, thinking about in a game, when you look at managing timelines, that coach can manage the game, the timeline of the game. So are they in the first quarter or the second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter? So being able to manage that timeline is similar from a coach to a project manager. Who is involved in these cases? Who is involved from a sports perspective, and who would be those similar players looking at an ERP implementation and a project manager role? On the left-hand side, what you see are the players and the coach. So the coach being the older gentleman there, those players in both the blue and the yellowish t-shirts. You can also see that there's different types of players on that sports team. It looks like maybe the one on the left is a goalie of that soccer team, and then the other players are different, maybe have different skills. Maybe they're offense or defense players. And so if we then look over onto the right-hand side on as far as an implementation goes, we have some of those similar characters when we look at an ERP implementation. So you have your implementer and your client as part of the project team. And so you see those folks as players on the team. And then you look at the software there being in the middle. To me, I compare that to the game of soccer, the rules of soccer, what your penalties are, or where you have to stay in bounds. You can't just run all over the field. Certain folks need to be on certain sides of the field at different times. And so I think about that as the software when looking at an implementation, and that you have to stay within these parameters. This is the functionality we have. This is what we are working within as far as our implementation goes. But then you also, like I said, have that implementer and the client being players of the team, looking to implement the software package within the organization. And so what is this, we're talking sort of conceptually here, things that resonate between a coach and a project manager and a sports event and an ERP implementation. But let's look at some, actual best practices that we can tie together to this whole theme. So what you see here at the top, I broke this down into two main areas, and I like to see these two, or sort of reference these areas as sort of the tactical side of project management best practices. So the first one there listed is a project methodology. It is critical to have a methodology for team members to follow along with. When they can see where the start of a project is versus the end of the project, they are in a much better position to know where they fit into the team, where they add value, and when their tasks are important to have completed, depending on what role they play on the project team. So having that methodology is really critical. And then that other box there is the project tracking and collaboration. For me, in my experiences, this is also a critical best practice, in that if you don't have a place where you can track the progress of a project, it really wreaks havoc on the project team. Team members don't know how complete things are. They don't know, when their stuff needs to be completed, their work items, their tasks need to be completed, because they don't know where we're at in the project. They don't have any way to see where we're at as far as completion goes. So having that central place for everybody to see where the project is at, see what items still need to be completed or are still open and need to be decisions be made on them. It's really challenging without having something to track that progress. And then I also listed there that collaboration in the same box, and that I see project tracking and collaboration as very similar in that we just need to be able to have that central place where all team members can see the project information is. They have that single source of truth where they can get that information from. And especially in our age, in our today's age, we're post, COVID, where employees have a lot of flexibility in their work days these days. As long as they're getting their work items done, they don't necessarily need to be doing it at the same time as other folks in a regular 9 to 5 sort of a work day. And so having a central place where at any time folks can go in and look at the information is critical. That way they are not frustrated because they're ready to work on their items and then don't have the information at their fingertips to be able to work on their tasks or work on their items. And then again, I've said it a few times, but having that single source of truth, it can be very frustrating for team members when they don't have the information that's accurate or up to date, and they have to go searching for it, maybe through emails or Teams message. So being able to have that central place where everything is stored is really a critical best practice for project management. And so now that we've gone through some of the sort of tactical items, I wanted to also touch on other areas that are really critical and what I think are almost more important, equally important. I shouldn't say more important, but equally important as your tactical items. And those are the areas of what you've maybe heard of called soft skills. So I don't necessarily like the word soft skills, because I think that they are very important and they can really elevate the project team when a project manager has these kinds of characteristics and can bring these to the table and bring them to their implementation. So what you see there, relationship builder, somebody who can build a relationship within the project team as an implementer, directly with the client and the client's project team. And then also between the two team members, or, between the two teams, bringing them together. Another piece being a central point of contact, also somebody who can engage in stakeholders. So being able to help stakeholders prioritize their work and drive accountability, and also looking proactively to identify if those stakeholders have any needs that you can see coming and being proactive about that. And then also being good at communication. Much of project management is communication. We're having Teams messages with team members. We're communicating via email. We're on meetings and in phone calls. So really being able to communicate concisely and accurately as a project manager is critical and is a best practice that we recommend. Now that we've got these laid on the table here, we can see the few areas or the areas here that I recommend as best practices. I wanted to bring us back to that sports theme. So looking at the top level of best practices here, I like to sort of see these as the scoreboard of a sporting event. When you're looking at the methodology, team members want to know, are we in the first quarter, the second quarter, the third quarter, fourth quarter? Where are we at in this game? Where are we at in the project? And then equally from a project tracking perspective, team members want to see, are we ahead in the game or are we losing? And how many points do we need to get in order to get ahead of our opponents? And without having something like a scoreboard, it is very challenging for team members to sort of understand where things are at in a project. And so when you think about watching a sports event on TV, there's always the score is on the bottom of the screen, or maybe the top of the screen. I know as a family, when we've watched sporting events, we've brought it up on the TV, and for whatever reason, the top gets cut off or the bottom gets cut off. And so you don't see the score of the game. And my kiddos have asked, Mom, what's the score? Are we winning? Are we losing? What period is it? We watch hockey, and so they want to know, is it the third period? Are they in overtime? What's going on? And so when we watch sporting events, we become accustomed to seeing that scoreboard, and it's very weird when we don't have that on the screen to see where we're at and what we need to do to win the game and be successful. And so I just think about that, equally as important from a project management perspective, and a project manager best practice is being able to show the score of the game and the implementation, making sure people know where we're at and understand, really the true status of the project via a scoreboard. So that's one element. And then we talked about those soft skills and the other areas below the methodology, tracking, and collaboration. And I like to view these other best practices as sort of the X's and the O's of the game. And really, this is driven by a coach and driven by a project manager who can strategically see where resources need to be allocated, or where we need to address a risk or an issue that we're having. And similarly in a game, Joe is not performing very well today. Who else can I put in his place that can maybe complete the task or get the work done? And so looking at those other skills and best practices at the bottom of the screen there really are where that project manager can shine and provide that strategic guidance to a project and to an implementation that can take it to the next level. And so we really do see those as best practices and something that we would expect when working on an implementation that a project manager would be able to do. So we've talked about a lot of things here. What I want to draw us to now is what at Stoneridge do we do in these areas. And so looking at a methodology perspective, we have our Stoneridge proven process. So when we look at how Stoneridge has been implementing our solutions and working with clients to implement ERP, we utilize that Stoneridge proven process. It is our methodology. It's the methodology all of our projects use when implementing. When we look at project tracking and collaboration, we utilize for projects our Azure DevOps software. And then we also use our SharePoint. And so when you look at the tools that Stoneridge is using, we have specific tools within these best practices that we use and implement for our projects. And so, we've found success utilizing those pieces within our projects. So let's take a look here just very quickly. We have our Stoneridge proven process. Starts with a line. You can see the different areas there as far as milestones, define being the second one there, create, deploy, and empower. So this really is the roadmap. This is what we share with all team members. And this is what we're working towards to get from point A to point Z and have a successful implementation. And so this is something that you would be, further exposed to, as you're going through a project with Stoneridge. And then our project tracking and collaboration. So there on the left, there is that Azure DevOps, really that scoreboard, a way for team members to see the progress that's being made. Everybody can asynchronously get the information that they need and know where they're at and when their work items need to be done in order for other team members to do the tasks that they need to do. And then on the right there is that SharePoint site. So being able to collaborate and utilize that site for that single source of truth. That way, all team members can go in, look at the information, and be able to drive forward with their tasks and complete their items when they're due. So with all of this, we have our project management best practices. We have our Stoneridge proven process. We have our project tracking and collaboration with Azure DevOps and SharePoint. And then focusing in on those areas at the bottom with the relationship builder, single point of contact, engaging stakeholders, communication. Without those 4 areas highlighted in red at the bottom, it makes everything above that very difficult for a project manager to accomplish. So looking at the first one there, having a dedicated project manager on your project is critical to be able to usher in the project properly, be able to, show team members the proven process, show them and run that scoreboard so that team members know where they're at. But having that dedicated project manager is really important. The other piece is having a qualified or trained, skilled project manager that knows how to run that scoreboard. They know how to be able to show the information to team members. They know how to be able to move players around as they need to, and have the skill sets from experience to be able to accomplish the goals and utilize these best practices in their implementations. And then the other piece I like to call out too is elevating that project manager role. I think oftentimes that role is not as elevated as it should be, in that it is challenging sometimes for project managers when they identify a risk or have an issue or need a decision to be made. They struggle to be able to bubble that up to leadership and bubble that up to the appropriate resources to make adjustments and make shifts as the project is going on. Because you will have areas where you need to make a critical decision or have a risk that needs to be mitigated. And without being able to, or without having an elevated role, it really makes it challenging for them to bubble that up to the leadership team. And then that last one there is just really having a good project leadership team where everyone can be working together to collaborate and help the project team be successful. Without that leadership team, it makes it really challenging. Again, back to the other things that we talked about as far as bubbling up risks, identifying risks and mitigating them, or working through decisions that have to be made as far as how features and functions will be used with the implementation. And so having that, good project leadership team is really important. Again, looking at all of these best practices, without those 4 areas on the bottom, we really have seen where it's been challenging for projects. But when they have that dedicated resource, they have a qualified resource, they're in an elevated role where they can escalate things, and they have a leadership team behind them, the rest of the other best practices really fall into place well, and we see a lot of success. And so going along the lines of a good project team and how using these best practices, it can be successful and why it matters. I'd like to draw our attention here. This is the Stoneridge team. And using these best practices that I've shared today, we have seen 74% of all of Stoneridge projects that went live, they were under budget. And this is a amazing statistic. Industry standard is far below this, but we have the tools and we have the best practices in place to be successful. And we've seen that come out in these projects. We have seen them be successful on time and under budget. And so utilizing these best practices really make a difference in your implementations and the success of your implementations. And that does wrap up my section of this, but I wanted to, before I ended, if you like the content that I went through today and you want more of it, you're in the right place. You're here at Stoneridge Connect. And you have the opportunity to really be participating in many, many breakout sessions. So I hope you have an opportunity to check more out today. There's also a lot of networking opportunities today and during throughout the day today. But if outside of today, you want to also continue to be learning and engaging and getting this type of information, we have many other areas where you can find this information. We have blogs, webinars, biweekly confabs. So I just encourage everybody to head out to these places and fill your knowledge with other information that we have out there. We like sharing it. We like being able to share this information with our community, and it makes all of us better because of it. And so with that, thank you. You've spent the last 30 minutes with me, and I appreciate you taking time to out of your day to be a part of this and listen to what I have to say. I hope that you've been able to see the connections between a coach, a good coach who has those good skills that can bring team members together and has a good vision and strategy for their team, and how that is very similar to a project manager, and how here at Stoneridge we really strive to ensure that our project managers are set up for success, have the strategic capabilities and vision to be able to implement a solution for our business or for our clients. And so I hope you've been able to draw those connections and been able to learn a little information from today's session. So with that, thank you very much. And until next time.